Welcome to episode 5 of the Utah Stories podcast. Thanks for joining me. Got a jam-packed episode for you today where we're going to be talking all about separation of church and state, how it appears the state is trying to create a fascistic monopoly in the medical cannabis industry, and how I come to that conclusion. We'll go over some of your comments, and at the very end, I got a special treat for you. We'll be showing an incredible, amazing, daring adventure by some guys in Moab who rigged up 1,000-foot swing. And I watched this, the beginning of this rigging happen, and it was absolutely incredible, and it'll be a treat to watch that at the end of the show. So stay tuned for the meat and potatoes. You'll get your dessert at the end. How about that? All right, let's get into it. So I said for the teaser video for this episode that what we were examining was how we needed to beware when our powers that be start treading on things that border as becoming fascistic monopolies. It happens in our, it can happen in our free market system. Obviously, a lot of people associate fascism with Hitler and Mussolini. I'm not in any fashion saying the church is at all like Hitler or Mussolini. That's not what I'm talking about. But what is fascism, really? What is it? It's when the state controls and manipulates a free market to the point where they can absolutely control what's going on in that market. Mussolini and Hitler both did that during the before the Second World War. During the Second World War, what I pointed out was that the Italian corporatism system practiced by Mussolini basically allows. It's exactly the opposite of the classical liberal idea, where the natural rights of human beings are preserved. It's where all people are subservient to the state rather than the state being operated and run by the people. Instead of popular sovereignty, which we have in America, which we're supposed to have, it's where the state tells the market, tells everybody how it's going to be. And mostly those are concerning economic principles. When the state controls the economy and the state is able to monopolize an economy, then that's fascistic. And so I was deciding whether or not I was going to go into talking about free trade in alcohol and our alcohol, comparing what we've got going on in Utah with our alcohol trade with what's going to happen in the medical marijuana trade. And because I wanted to point out this interesting comment. I want to thank Serena Johnson for giving this comment. This is when I gave the 5-minute teaser video. She said, this is really not a surprise, though. I mean, we have state liquor stores controlled, run, and profiting by the state. The article gives just enough information to raise the alarm, but no facts based on opinion. For example, among other things, the Mormon Church actually taking control, or they simply that the majority of Utahns are Mormon, so by default, the government majority is Mormon. Same goes for the control who gets the medical marijuana. Is the Mormon Church in direct control, or the majority of doctors in Utah also Mormon? I'm not saying we should ignore it because the article is vague. I'm saying we should do more research. Thank you for calling me out, Serena. I like being called out like that. So let's take a look at what the difference between church and state means and whether this is a violation, because we'll go into a little more detail the lawsuit that's impending and whether that lawsuit has merit. So the wall of separation between church and state, that's what was addressed by Thomas Jefferson, and here's how he worded it. He said, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibit the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between the church and state. So there needed to be, he said, we can't pass any law basically respecting a religion, saying, hey, this religion is what is going to get all the power, and we're going to basically respect them and favor them. And you also cannot make a law that prohibits a religion. And there should be a clear wall of separation between church and state. So here's why I believe that Truce, the advocacy group for patients, is accurate in their assessment that this is a violation. So when I asked Senator Vickers, was this central fill concept, which the central fill will, in effect, will allow the state to monopolize the cannabis trade because they will own the distribution. Was this your idea, Senator Vickers? Or was it the church's idea? And he said, you're going to have to ask the church that question. And so I can infer, I believe, that he is telling me this was the church's idea. And that means basically the church has to answer for that, and the church cannot be in the business of telling our state leaders what policies to pass. There is no separation there. There's no wall. It's unconstitutional. And so let's take a look at what's going on with this lawsuit and whether or not they have a leg to stand on. The Prop 2 supporters sent a letter to the LDS Church threatening legal action. Let's take a look at this clip now. Here's what Governor Herbert had to say.
The attorney representing some medical cannabis advocates say the church is getting too involved.
But you could say the same thing if you're in Massachusetts about the Catholic Church. Again, we have a lot of faith-based organizations that have influence on what we say when it comes to, in fact, significant issues of policy, particularly those that have a moral bent to them.
So I think he's absolutely right in saying that the church has every right to chime in on significant issues of policy when it affects the moral, ethical well-being of the membership and the population. No doubt about it, they have every right to chime in. But where they cross the line is insisting the state creates a fascistic monopoly on the trade and distribution of medical cannabis. And that's where they cross over the line clearly. And if in fact the church did mandate that they privatize all of the distribution under the state, and that's directed by the church, then the church is in essence controlling the cannabis trade, controlling the cannabis market. And that's not okay. That is a crossing of the line. And so this is the letter that Rocky Anderson, who's the mayor for Truce, attorney for Truce, he's the former mayor of Salt Lake City. Here's what he had to say. He said, "The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a long history of dominating and interfering with government of the state of Utah, often dictating to state and municipal legislatures what legislative measures or policies they are to support or oppose. That dominance and interference is prohibited by the Utah Constitution," the letter states. Here's what the church had to say back. As members of the community, we've worked from the outset with medical professionals, law enforcement, educators, and many other groups. That's absolutely true. They worked with all these groups, the church, in helping reach out to craft the compromise, to provide relief from human pain and suffering, especially where children are concerned. I don't know that there's any special provisions for children in the bill that they wrote. Broad community engagement was the reason of a workable, beneficial, safer medical cannabis. So, I mean, they're using the guise of safety for their reason for privatizing it. But there's no medical cannabis law in all of the United States or Canada or anywhere where the state wants to take control of a sector of the economy, wants to control all of the trade of cannabis, wants to have private stores, a private medical fill area funded by taxpayers to ensure that they're able to monopolize the trade. So you cannot say you're doing that for safety. That doesn't work. If you're doing it for one reason, and that is out of greed. I mean, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what other reason the medical fill, the central fill, serves besides the greed of our state leaders, by the auspices of the church to take control of a giant market that's coming to Utah. And so that's basically what I have to say about that. I'm going to be going in now to all of the poison pills that are in this legislation. I'm going to see how many I can get to. Before I get into that, I want to tell you about the one thing you can do to help this podcast grow. I want to tell you to go to the Made in Utah Festival and or buy one of our local holiday gift boxes. We got these amazing gift boxes where we've hand curated all these great products from Utah makers, where you can help support the local economy and give a cool present for Christmas to your relatives and friends instead of some crappy thing made in China that's going to end up in a landfill. These are like really great food items or bath and body products. Go to madeinutahfest.com to learn more about that. And that's really all we ask for you to support this program, besides sharing it and subscribing. Okay, so let's switch gears and go into the actual legislation and take a look at what's inside of it, where we find poison pills. So let's look at line 488 first. So this is what I really don't like. This would be absolutely unnecessary in every other state. Line 488. They want to create a general fund, an enterprise account known as the Qualified Production Enterprise Account. The account will be created, money the department deposits, and it will take appropriations from the legislature to make this account. It'll be millions of dollars they will have to put in this account just to get the central fill concept and all the state-run facilities up and running. I mean, millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money so the state can monopolize the industry. That's not okay. Why should our money, our taxpayer dollars, be given to the state so they can monopolize an industry? That's not okay. And that's absolute garbage. 488, lines 488 through 500 should be struck. There's no need for the state to be involved in the distribution of cannabis at all. So let's now go to 552 in this bill. This next part I find problematic, because basically what they're mandating here is that any cannabis processing facility must be, it used to be 600, within 600, it has to be 1,000 feet away from a community location. Community location. What does that mean? Well, of course it means schools, rec centers, libraries, probably parks, but that's such vague terminology. They're not explaining what a community location means. It could mean a popular restaurant. It could mean they don't want any cannabis that's anywhere near any type of restaurant or community location or within residential use. And the counties, because only essentially 4 counties passed Proposition 2, and the rest of the counties in Utah are so predominantly Mormon, they don't want to see legal cannabis, and I'm sure they're really misinformed about the medicinal value of it. Those counties could, in essence, say, "Oh, well, you're too close to the community location. You're too close, so we can't allow you to have your production facility." They need to be less vague in their terminology. And so let's go on to 733. Okay, so I inaccurately reported that there were going to be 20 cultivation licenses in episode 3. It was actually 15, but now it's been reduced to 10. Just 10 cultivation licenses. And so why does that matter? Why is that a big deal? Because there will, right from the onset, be 30,000 patients in need of medical cannabis. And that will require, if there's 10 grow licenses, that will require each grower to provide for 3,000 patients at a minimum. Each patient requiring about 2 ounces a month would require that one grower to produce 2 tons of flower per year. So I did research, as I saw before, that would require at least 20,000 square feet of grow space. Why I cannot stand that is because you'll need millions of dollars just to be in the game, just to produce anywhere near 20,000 square feet of grow space or 2 tons of flower. you'll need to have millions of dollars. So what does that do? That takes every single Utah farmer. We have amazing farmers in the state. I've written about them for years, and takes them out of the picture. Where the state's basically saying, sorry, you guys, you're just not rich or successful enough to take part in this. You don't have, so you also need to have $250,000 on hand in a bank account, but you don't have millions of dollars to put up for a greenhouse. Too bad. You can't do that. So there's another provision in here that basically says that they need to be, you cannot, the medical growing facility cannot be seen from the perimeter. So you either got to build a giant fence that nobody can see through, or you got to do all of it indoors. More millions of dollars. And then you also have the provision on the blister packs. They're saying it needs to be so obvious that it's medicine. It needs to be completely obvious. So we got to put it in blister packs. Otherwise, kids aren't going to think it's medicine, and they're just going to go take it and smoke it. Huge another cost to patients. So with what you see is you'll layer after layer after layer after layer of government intrusion into the system, which is going to cause the price to increase for patients, which is going to cause fewer poor patients who are, might be prescribed opioids otherwise to not be able to afford it. And it's an absolute disaster, this compromise bill. And so let's play a couple of clips now from the meeting just a few days ago and hear what some of the patients and people there had to say. This first clip is former Utah Mayor Rocky Anderson.
Except to ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. That is an outrageous discriminatory provision, and this needs so much more thought given to it. Those who drafted Proposition 2 put that thought into it, and it's for this body to give voice to the people that passed Proposition 2, and then see what kind of tweaks are necessary in the future, but not to gut, not to obliterate the central core purposes of Proposition 2. Thank you.
So what he's saying there is basically Proposition 2, 5 years of work went into crafting that legislation, what we passed. 5 years. Then the LDS Church did organize all these groups together and said, let's do a compromise. They took 2 months to craft that legislation. 2 months, and they took out all of the very, very good measures which would have allowed patients the best kind of access available. One of the provisions in there was if you live more than 100 miles away from a dispensary, you can grow your own. You just grow 6 plants, up to 6 plants. In Colorado, you can grow your own. That was completely removed because they want to monopolize the cannabis industry. If people were able to grow their own, they couldn't monopolize it. So what the attorney for Truce, Rocky Anderson, is saying is pass Prop 2 and do what any other state does. Pass it, and if there's problems, you pass additional legislation to deal with the problems. Instead, what they're doing is they're creating the worst possible bill for patients, for entrepreneurs, for people who love freedom, and they're putting that out there, and they're saying, whatever's wrong with that, we'll just fix that. We find it's way too terrible for people to work with, then we'll just simply fix it. And so I have way more poison pills listed on here. I don't have time to go into all of them because I got to keep this around 20 minutes. But I want to read just a couple more comments from you guys. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate your comments and, being a part of this community. I can tell you I started this this little podcast because of let me tell you after I read the comment. Okay, I found the comment on our Central Phil article. So I spent a lot of time researching medical cannabis. I wrote a big, long article on it. I thought nobody would read it. It was really nice to see this guy, Maynard Keller from Truce, read it and said, "Thank you, Utah Stories. This is such a great, insightful, in-depth article. Exactly the kind of journalism needed on a critical issue where virtually all of the rest of the state's media have been missing in action. Treating the compromise bill cooked up by the state's usual short-sighted, self-interested power brokers is just Prop 2 light when it's no such thing. Rather, some kind of new top-heavy bureaucratic monster which has no chance of meeting patient needs. Every Utahn concerned with their health should read and share this article." Thank you very much, Maynard. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments. But I do want to touch on what you said about the mainstream media. I don't think that they have missed this. I think that the greater issue is that the television news reporters, they just have 3 minutes to cover this. And this is such an important, insightful, or important issue that you can't just spend a few minutes working on a story with. I mean, if the news station still had the ability to spend like a half an hour examining all sides of this issue, they could do a great job, but they just work on these shoestring budgets. And with that, I want to tell you how incredibly fortunate I feel that I'm able to produce this podcast and this magazine and do it absolutely independently. If I was working for a newspaper or a station, they'd say, "What the hell are you doing? You got to move on. You can't work on this one story for weeks. You got to go on to the car crashes and the murders and the rapes." And so it's really thanks to you, the readers, the watchers, that I'm able to do this. And I feel so extremely fortunate to be able to do it. And there's a lot more comments on this page. And it's really cool to see that when I spend a lot of time on a story and I get a lot of feedback. And so, go out and comment. I love getting comments. Call me out when I'm wrong. I really do like to keep this as a dialogue. I like to hear from you guys more than anything. And all right. And so the last thing I really wanted to show you, just hang on. Okay. So the last thing was blister packs, right? Blister packs were supposed to be great, perfect, awesome, because they were going to address the need of showing something as medicine and not candy. The way Speaker Hughes says, it'll be obvious that it's medicine and not some kind of illicit product. Let me show you how you get medical marijuana in Colorado. Tell me, does this look like candy? Can you see that? It looks just like a prescription container, but it's a little plastic container you can open up. This is a medical marijuana container. It says right on here how much CBD is in it, indica. I'll provide a close-up of it. It also has this big warning label, THC. Nobody is in their right mind will ever think this is candy. No kid is going to grab this and eat it. You don't need to put them in blister packs. That should be the end of the story. I think the state legislature, they try to reinvent the wheel in Utah. They don't want to look at other states and what they're doing. It's just such an obvious solution. And then you're not dealing with producers who have to buy blister packaging machines, which require operators, which increase costs for patients. That should be obvious. And so now comes the very fun part. I'm going to show you this incredible, amazing video produced by some friends of mine in Moab. I have the opportunity almost every month to go to Moab. It's one of the best parts of my job. We distribute a ton of magazines down there, and I have to make sure that our advertisers are happy down there. And so I go to Moab. I write about Moab. I love Moab. It's so fun to go there. And I want to show you this incredible video. These are some guys, I watched them start rigging this up, where they decided to create a 1,000-foot swing between cliffs. And they decided to rig it up so they could swing out 1,000 feet almost up over the Colorado River. And here's what that looked like. This is thanks to Matt at Moab Canyoneering Adventures. I might be getting that name wrong. I'm gonna look it up after this. That's Matt, who owns Canyoneering Adventures. He's a... Look at that. Look at that. Wow. Look how far out he goes. And there's his drone following him.
How did your phone not go flying right there?
Yeah, that's spectacular. So this is what Moab tour guides do in the off season when they aren't, directing all of the people who go to Moab to see the most amazing scenery on Earth. And so with that, I think we will wrap up episode 5, the Utah Story Show. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.